Does it work? Yeah? Okay. Here we go. So, thank you very much for being here. Oh my God, I'm getting blind. Oh my God. Yeah, my name is Riccardo Tempesta, and I'm CTO at Mage Specialist. And today I hope you are full of caffeine because we are going to see about security. We'll see a lot of buggy code that will be not exactly funny. But yeah, it's part of a security. And I will say from the beginning, I will not say anything about encryption, about password strength, and blah, blah, blah. Because I hope you're using HTTPS or your password is something more complex than 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I mean, use at least 8 and uppercase, please. But instead, I want to start my speech with one question. With one question. And this question is, what is the difference between real-life security and IT security? Well, most of you probably would just answer, well, real security is just, yeah, real. That's an impressive answer, actually. And it's because you know, if someone breaks in my house, we mean this for real-life security. If someone breaks in my house, it's scary. Maybe they break during the night, they can steal my money, they can hurt me. This is going to be real, dangerous, scary. And if someone hacked my PC, actually, what is the problem? I just have my Steam account. Yeah, okay, I also have that secret folder, but we'll not talk about that. But, okay, but it doesn't work like this, actually. Because today we live in what I call a cyborg society. I say cyborg because, you know, a cyborg is an organism composed by one biological part and one mechanical part. And this is actually how our society is, because we are the biological part. I mean, we are humans, but we live with machines, I mean, computers. And we rely on machines, sometimes even for life support. So today we are interconnected with machines, actually. Yeah, we rely on machine as well as machine relies on us. This is enough. So actually, in a cyborg society, IT security is going to be real. Because if someone, for example, steals your PayPal account, they are going to steal your money. And this is absolutely real. If I steal your Facebook password, I can, for example, know where you live, what are your secrets, yeah, the stuff that your wife doesn't want to know. And, for example, I can even get the picture of your children. And this is going to be absolutely dangerous and scary. And the most scariest part, the scariest part is that, for example, if someone breaks in your house, you know it immediately. If someone breaks in some of your account, you may do not know, sometimes. So you can have a man in the machine for 1 month without knowing. And this is going to be actually scary. But despite this, what I've seen is that very few people are really concerned about security. Oh yeah, if you're asking me, that is the proper way to say what in Italian. Actually, it's more WTF, but you don't speak Italian, so it's fine. Because the reasons are awesome, because whenever I ask them why you are not going to install a security patch in Magento, oh, the answer is fantastic, because it seems like a kind of optimism. So they say, oh, my shop is too small, no one will care about my shop, no one will hack me. Oh, it seems like the ugly duckling story, you know. And sometimes I just answer them, oh, don't worry, you will find an hacker that will make you happy sooner or later. Because actually it doesn't work like this. And even big customers, they just say you, oh, I'm big, no one will hack me. What? It doesn't work like this, because if you're small, big, black, white, purple, whatever, if you have a security issue, someone will use it sooner or later. This is absolutely true. Even because, do you remember what happened in 1984 when we forgot about machine security? No one remember? Actually? No, Terminator. Yeah, I'm quite sure, well, this is of course a joke because I don't think that Magento will travel back in time to kill your mother. But, well,
give us time.
At least that Magento 2, yeah, Magento 3, do you have such kind of features? Yeah. No, I just want to make sure you did not misunderstand when I told you that Magento 2 was a killer application. It was a different way. Okay, but let's come back to reality. Actually, security is a very serious topic. And we can face security from operating system point of view, infrastructure point of view, social engineering, but today I want only to talk about application level. So we'll see a lot of buggy code. So the focus of my speech will be just this one. Because I believe that despite sci-fi movies, actually humans are the most hackable systems. In a way that we are the only one providing bugs for our softwares. So actually the bugs is inside us. And I want to underline this because a lot of people are saying me, oh, but Magento is one of the most secure e-commerce platforms in the world, so I should not concern about security. And this is absolutely true, it is, but you cannot just rely on that because you're going to customize Magento, you're going to install third-party extensions, you're going to configure Magento. So actually you could be the very first one adding a security issue. I know what you're thinking is, yeah, I'm a good programmer, I'm not adding security issues. We'll see how we can add security issues without knowing that, actually. So I identified 3 main rules of the IT security Fight Club. Yeah, the first one, I want to start with this one, because in my opinion, it's probably the most important because we are talking about Magento, and you know that Magento is an open source software. So I think that, I'm sorry, I didn't, yeah, is to report any third-party security issue we may find. Because I think that, yeah, I know that Magento Security is a responsibility of the great Magento team, but Magento is open source, so if you find something, I think it's your duty to say them, this is something wrong. So you have to contribute to security as well. Even because, guys, you know that Magento people are quite known to be crazy people because they pay you. If you find any security bug, they pay you. This is kind of crazy because they allow you to use the most powerful e-commerce platform in the world for free, and they pay you if you find something wrong. They're crazy. And they pay you up to $10,000. So you can use my slides. I think it should be a very strong and big security issues, actually. But yeah, you can use my slide to get rich, because we will know how. And yeah, the second one is, we told before, avoid as much as possible introducing new security issues. So we have to understand what actually a security issue is. And a security issue is nothing more than one unexpected behavior of your code when one input is provided. This is nothing more. It seems very simple stuff. Actually, it's very hard to understand. Now we're going to see how we could accidentally introduce a security bug, but before we go, I need to show a disclaimer, because the next slide may contain PHP code and may hurt your sensitivity. Even because, yeah, of course, I changed class names, variable names, and so on, but all the code snippets you will see here come from third-party extensions I found. So it's absolutely real. It's not just my imagination. Example number 1, and this one of my favorites. So we have a block class. This is a quite simple block class getting an outside parameter, we call it search, and we have a PHTML file that will just display search result for and the input we provided. What's wrong here? I want to see some one of you raising your hand or telling me what's wrong here. It's quite simple here. Go. What?
Unfiltered input.
Yeah, exactly. Because if we do not escape the input, the problem is that we could inject the JavaScript, for example. And I have seen this many times because in my opinion, it's one of the most dangerous bugs you may introduce and the most undervalued. Because if I create a link like this, actually this is the URL encoded form of this string, I can send an email to one of your customers, and if this customer click on that link, I can steal the session, I can get information, and this is going to be extremely dangerous. And I think you will find this many, many, many times. This is why probably Magento is adding a lot of escapes inside the code. And yeah, of course, the solution is quite simple, so we should add just one escape HTML. That is enough. It's not complex, but it will save you a lot of headaches, actually. Example number 2 is, I don't remember what was one. Okay, this is another easy example. So we've got a method, get category articles. I don't remember, it was a blog handling extension. I don't remember exactly. And we have a query. Okay, we see many times wrong actually in this code, but we have an SQL query directly inside our model, and it is like this. So we got category ID from the outside. So I will not ask you because I think all of you understood that this is vulnerable to SQL injection, for example. Because if we provide an input like this, we are going to run the so-called union select SQL injection attack. So we are going to add information to the previous query. So for example, we can even get information from the admin user table, and this is just an example. And yeah, in the best scenario, we have sensitive information leak, but few people know that MySQL has methods to read and write file system. So we can even use it to create files, to read files, and so on. This is going to be extremely dangerous. And yeah, of course, we've got different options to fix it. The first one is just to use in the right way the PDO connection. And the option 2 is to make an explicit quote. And the third option, I will show you in minutes. I think it will be the most important because I think you're not using Magento in the right way, so you need to call Vinay up for some good training because you need it. Oh, Vinay, you look like Mika the singer in this picture. That's very... I'm joking, of course, yeah. Example number 3. Yeah, this is much more tricky. So we are going to increase the level. What you see wrong here, actually, we have a method reading one path, so one file. And we are going to make a check here. So we are filtering what is technically called path traversal bug. So to go outside our jail, let's call this. But we have a check here because we have this smart boy. But it's just a nice try. Because very few people know that PHP will handle backslashes in the same way as slashes, even in Linux. So the previous code is absolutely ineffective. I have seen this many times. And we can read any file in any position, actually. So how we can protect, for example, from this kind of bug? Well, this is more complex, but we should normalize the path before checking it. And you can use, for example, get real path. That is enough. So you get the real path and you check if the path belongs to the route we allow. And this is going to be very dangerous. I know that a lot of people do not know about this, but it's PHP. And even the example number 4 is tricky because we are going to use Unsterilized, for example, and few people know that Unsterilized is a very dangerous method. Because look here, we have our class. Okay, we write this class, and somewhere in the code, even probably outside your code, is a third module extension, so it's not actually one danger usually. And we have a destruct magic method that checks if a file exists, and we've got a private variable for this file. So this is fine. We are going to just delete this file, but few people know that Unsterilized can unpack objects. So we can, for example, rewrite the content of the TMP file variable. So we can delete another file. This is just an example because using Unsterilized can lead to remote code execution. So we can run some PHP code we want. It can lead to SQL injection, path traversal. Is actually probably the mother of all the bugs. And yeah, fixing it is quite simple. So in my opinion, you should use JSON instead of Unsterilized. But if you want to use Unsterilized for performance issue, you should use the one provided by Magento because you have filtered the object injection. And yeah, I will stop with examples, and I want to say that no programmers or DevOps were injured while running this code, but do not try this at all. But what is the lesson? The lesson is that you have to think like an hacker, but please not that kind of hacker you see in CSI New York. I mean, that kind of hacker that doesn't use the mouse and type very fast on the keyboard. I don't know how they can. But I was thinking something more Mr. Robot, you know. And why? Because, of course, whenever you have a security issue, it comes from your input. So I can say for sure that a lot of code-based attacks depends on missing escapes and missing input normalization. So this should be enough. And please, I have to ask you, stop copy and pasting from Stack Exchange without knowing what you're doing. Even because we know that most of the code comes from Stack Exchange, but we do not know for sure how much comes from the question and how much from the answer. And this is going to be a problem, actually. And yeah, the third point I've seen is to be able to identify and prevent attacks. Especially because you have to understand if your website was hacked, because as I told you before, sometimes it's very hard to understand if someone hacked your website, even because not always they just make a defacement. So defacement is a replacement of your home page. Not always. Sometimes they just inject malicious JavaScript code, and you probably do not know about that if you do not have the right tools to do that. And it's going to be very, very, very tricky. You can use the well-known Mage report, of course, to be informed about the new Magento patches. You can use the Magento Security Scanner. This is a tool coming from Magento. It's a very powerful tool that will check your website, for example, for malicious JavaScript code and so on. But they are going to check your website from the outside. So sometimes it's not exactly effective. Because if you have an hidden file somewhere, for example, a PHP shell, yeah, because you can even use PHP to create a shell and have full access to your machine, you should use different tools. The first one is my favorite one. Actually, it's not exactly a tool, it's just a TXT file, but it contains a lot of patterns of code you will find on websites that have been hacked. And you can run through grep and get a list of files. Actually, you will have a lot of false positives, of course, but you can have a list of files you should check to see if you have something wrong. And the second one, I discovered this just few weeks ago. I mean, no, I knew about ClaimAV, but I didn't know that ClaimAV is able to scan PHP files and JavaScript files. So, for example, you can use you can use ClaimAV to find malicious code. Of course, we are talking about known vulnerabilities and known threats. Of course, we cannot say about unknown threats. For the unknown, you have to use the previous tool. But of course, we are talking about when it's too late, when you have already been hacked. So actually, prevention should be the best option. And since I told you before that if we are using Magento, we should be contributing, because open source, I say again, means contributing, I want to be a good example. And our company released a full set of tools. We call it the Security Suite. It's a set of different tools that will improve your Magento security. I mean, you can add two-factor authentication, you can add the famous Google reCAPTCHA, even the visible one. You can prevent from comments from spammers, you can filter malwares, and so on. But the most important tool is probably the last one. This rocks, and not because I brought it. Yeah, it's because I brought it, yeah. But, yeah. I'm joking. Because it is an IPS IDs. IPS IDs, if you're not in the security world, it means intrusion detection system and intrusion prevention system. Usually, this kind of tools is outside Magento. I mean, it's before Magento. It's before a website, because you have to stop one threat before the website. But we created this model inside Magento at application level plugin. So it runs very early in the code. So you can rely for the most powerful attacks. And the main advantage of running this inside Magento is that we created for Magento. So you have no false positives. So for example, if we try to run a SQL injection, this module is capable of understanding the whole database structure of Magento and understanding you're trying to attack Magento. Basically, it's we start from the input, we unpack the input, because I can, for example, inject directly one SQL injection, or I could encode using base64, for example. So we will unpack in a recursive way, and we simplify what we found in an encoded form. This is going to be a very complex procedure, a very complex algorithm. And then we pass this to a pattern identification. And if we find a score more than, in our case, is 80, is a score we just provided, we run a lockdown, a website lockdown for that session. So the threat is stopped before it can reach Magento. And the most important part is that it's capable of detecting attacks for even unknown vectors, because it's capable of understanding if we are, for example, injecting a JavaScript code or a SQL or a PHP. I want to show you a video. It's a very short video on it running live. Okay. Okay, we just send a SQL, I'm sorry, this is going to ask the password. If we try, for example, to send an encoding SQL injection in Base64, this is capable of understanding we are going to send something wrong, and we stop the request. If you try to run an XSS, so the example we have seen, the very first example, so a JavaScript code injection, it's capable of understanding we are running a JavaScript code, and it stops. If we try a more complex example, because this is actually an XSS injection, but you see, it's a more complex one, because it seems an URL. But we are able to understand it is, and we stop. And of course, if we try to just send a lorem ipsum, it doesn't stop, because the input is valid. And we can even try this one. This one is very like a SQL query. Select anything you like from this website. Actually, it's a safe text, and we identify a safe text, even if it is like a SQL injection. So this is very accurate. And so guys, I'm done, so I'm stopping boring you. Oh no, this is going to go and look. Stop, and yeah. Thank you very much for your time, and if you have questions, I think I've been just in time.
Anyone have any questions while we transition to our next speech?
Yeah, just please do not hack my accounts, please.
All right, thank you, Riccardo.